Welcome to the Your Courageous Life podcast, where we discuss psychology and tools to help you create better habits, cultivate discipline, and live with courage, aka grit and emotional resilience. I'm your host, Kate Swoboda. Learn more about my books and get additional resources at yourcourageouslife.com. And now, here's today's episode. Hello, everybody. It's Kate, and I am wishing you so much happiness from whatever corner of the world you happen to be listening from. Today's episode will be about a pretty heavy topic if you are someone who is actually considering doing this. It's about going no contact, but with kindness. So we'll dive into it. It's going to be a little bit longer, I think, than some of my other episodes because there's a lot that I want to unpack about going no contact. I actually want to give you the structure of a no contact conversation. And very importantly, I want to talk about how to deal with the aftermath of going no contact. Because when you're thinking of going no contact with someone and you're trying to decide, should I, shouldn't I, and all of that, a lot of your energy gets pulled into the how to have the conversation or do I have the conversation or what do I do? And then there's this whole other world, actually, after the conversation. And I want to get into that today. Often, when someone is considering going no contact with family members, friends, with an ex after a breakup, one of the tensions of that decision is wanting to go no contact for your own self-preservation, combined with sometimes anger, guilt, shame, maybe guilt about how it might impact the other person, sadness about the finality of the decision, worry that there could be regrets. So we're going to zero in on when the decision to go no contact is a truly healthy one, how to do it. Like I said, I'm going to give you the structure of a conversation with some examples and then dealing with the aftermath of going no contact because the job is not done just because you had the conversation. So let's get into that decision. Do I or don't I go no contact? And is it a healthy one? And if this topic is up for you, then there's probably a relationship that already springs to mind when you're thinking about what it would mean to go no contact. Chances are that it's a relationship where you've already had some level of struggle too. You know, reasonable people, and I'm assuming that you, the listener, are a reasonable person, don't just wake up one day and decide they don't like someone or don't want to talk to them anymore. You know, we give people the benefit of the doubt. We understand that the people we love the most go through ups and downs and changes. We get it. Sometimes we don't like even the people we love. And guess what? Sometimes they don't like us, even if they might love us. So it can get very confusing. In my experience working with clients and my own experience of going no contact when I've needed to in my personal life, there are typically 3 times when someone will consider just cutting off a relationship. One is if the relationship never really launched. And I think one of the most common examples is something like you two worked together and maybe you don't anymore. And now there's just less to talk about. This could be the case too, like for college friends. You went to college together, now you don't anymore. There just isn't anything to talk about because you used to talk about work or you used to talk about college. Now that's not there. There's nothing particularly hostile. It was just a contextual relationship and the circumstances under which you were connecting just don't apply any longer. And maybe this person is still trying to be in your life and you're feeling kind of like, okay, but I don't think the relationship is there. So that's the example of the relationship that never really launched. Another time when someone might decide, I might need to go no contact here, is because a relationship has really changed in a big way. So you're not feeling connected. And this is a situation where the relationship did launch. It's, you used to feel connected, but now you don't. And you may or may not know why. And then there's the big kahuna. Other times, the most common situation when people go no contact, usually more often with family or a longer term relationship, the consideration of going no contact comes up because you're not feeling psychologically safe or the relationship pretty seriously lacks a sense of belonging. And in that case, there's usually a long-term pattern in the relationship, and likely both parties have contributed to it in some way. In any of these 3 relationship scenarios, there are 4 options you're usually trying to choose from. Do you want to build the relationship? Do you want to repair the relationship? Do you want to limit the relationship? Or do you want to end the relationship? And of course, going no contact is ending the relationship. So before we get too much further into this, what am I actually talking about when I'm saying going no contact? It's essentially cutting off, relationship. So some would say it means you do not ever send any communication. You do not respond to any form of communication whatsoever. You delete their name from your phone book. You do not check what they're doing via social media. You essentially try to pretend that this person no longer exists. And I don't mean that in a harsh way. I mean it in a way of just like, it's like, this is done. We're not having a relationship any longer. In reality, not everyone needs to go no contact. Sometimes, and this is a conversation worth asking yourself, am I tempted to go no contact as a way to deal with my pain? And that might not be the best choice for that relationship. There might actually be more pain from reactively going no contact because someone has hurt you than there is from sorting through the pain with them. That's why I'm saying some of your options are to build a relationship, to repair a relationship, to limit a relationship. So it's not automatically they hurt me, so that's it, we're done, bye. Some people do operate that way. I have operated that way before. I have regretted operating that way before. I just want to say that, by the way. I have. So not everyone needs to go no contact. And sometimes you are really listening for the no contact conversation in the sense of, I need to go as no contact as absolutely possible, even though I understand that ultimately I can't really go no contact. So, again, you might be deciding, do I want to build a relationship, end this relationship, limit the relationship? Those are other options. Those are alternatives to going no contact. As an example, with a coworker, you only had work to talk about when you worked together. You no longer work together. Now you might consider, can we build this relationship into something more? With a friend you don't feel as connected to, you might consider repairing the relationship. In situations where there is a divorce and 2 parents are sharing joint custody of children, you might limit the relationship, deciding that, okay, the only contact we're going to have is we're going to discuss drop-offs, pickups, illnesses, important matters tied to our children, but we do not discuss our lives or anything else. There's a very clear boundary in that case that's about handling the shared responsibilities, and that is it. My personal take is that going no contact is something reserved for relationships that are not psychologically safe, even after attempts to repair or improve the situation. Me personally, everybody has a different capacity, even in relationships that are not psychologically safe or that would be so-called toxic, which is such a rampant label these days. I have attempted to repair or improve the situation. And the reason that I have done that is because I know that I have not always been psychologically safe for other people, unintentionally, certainly. And I always want to try to come from a place of giving people chances to change behavior because that's what I would want. But that is by no means a prescriptive that I'm giving to other people. I do notice that in our current cultural moment, at least based on the confessions of what seems like thousands, millions of people on social media, there's often a knee-jerk reaction oriented towards labeling people. So they're toxic, they're an energy vampire, they're a narcissist. And what I notice is that once that label has been applied, everything the person does from there on out is viewed through the lens of the label. And once everything the person does is viewed from the lens of that label, the relationship essentially has no hope of turning around. So even in situations that someone would go, oh, no, there is no question here. They are a narcissist. No question here. They are toxic. Even if I'm really, really convinced, I tend to err on the side of giving it a little bit of a try to see if there can be some resolution. That's what I do. The other thing that I want to put into this conversation, having coached people through these situations, having been supported and coached through these situations, I really think the labels end up being less helpful because the reality is that most people are nuanced and contextual. We don't like to believe it when we're the ones who are hurting, but even the person you dislike most in the world has people in their lives that they are kind to. And the context of their relationship with you might be 100% misaligned, but their context of their relationship with someone else might not be. And therefore, that label isn't all of who they are. And if you yourself have ever had someone write you off with a label, you know what that feels like and the pain of being misunderstood. So for that reason, rather than labeling the person, it's a stronger choice to ask yourself, what are the specific behaviors that I'm seeing? What is the impact of those behaviors on me? And then asking yourself, if I would like to change the dynamic of those behaviors and their impact on me, is there anything here I can take responsibility for? I'm not asking you to take responsibility for the things they do that are harmful. I'm not asking you to take responsibility for the relationship. I'm suggesting that it is a point of personal power when we ask ourselves in any situation we don't like, where can I take responsibility? So asking yourself, can I take an action that will build the relationship? Is there an action I can take that will repair the relationship? An action that will limit the relationship in a way that causes less harm for both of us? Or is the action I need to take deciding to end the relationship? You only have control over your own intentions, where you place your attention, and whether or not you react or respond. So looking at the actions you yourself can take is where this has to start if your desired result is some version of a more harmonious relationship. Speaking of that desired result for a more harmonious relationship, is that what you want? Is it actually what you want? If you're trying to figure out whether you want to build, repair, limit, or end a relationship, try asking yourself, if life could somehow make it happen, would I want to be in relationship with this person? If there's a clear no, then that's another data point indicating either limiting or ending the relationship. If the answer is something more like, well, sure, I mean, if we knew one another better, or that would be nice, but I don't know how to get back to the closeness we once had, then that gives you some clues as to where you might be well positioned to build or repair a relationship. Because of course, today I'm not going to tell you you should or should not or any of that. You are the one in charge of your life. You're the one making these decisions about your relationships, and they're not easy decisions. My role today is just to try to support you in getting some clarity. Do I or don't I want to go no contact? If I do go no contact, what would I say in the conversation? And then how am I going to deal with the things I feel afterwards that might come up for me? So let's go back to the 3 different times when someone is likely to decide, I don't want to continue this relationship. One being relationships that never really launched, another being when the relationship changed, and another being when the relationship does not feel psychologically safe. All 3 of these scenarios do have something in common, and it's you. You and how you relate to each of the people if you are in any of these scenarios. So I want to ask something of a provocative, I think empowering question for you to explore. What do other people have to do with you at the heart of who you are? What do other people have to do with you at the heart of who you are? So you have a former work colleague, and now that you no longer work together, you have less to say to each other. What does that actually have to do with you at the heart of who you are? You have a friend who you used to be close to, now you don't feel close. What does that have to do with you at the heart of who you are? Okay, so you've got some family members who are angry or petty or mean or unkind. What does that have to do with you at the heart of who you are? And for all of those questions, I'm hopeful that you are seeing the answer to arrive at here is actually nothing. Other people's behavior really has nothing to do with you most of the time. Other people are being who they want to be, and who you are at the heart of it all is so separate from people's behavior or people's choices. You could set a boundary or not, and they could do what they wanted to do, and at the end of the day, it wouldn't really, not really matter in terms of the heart of who you are. They can honor a boundary and it won't change the heart of who you are, or they can tell you that you suck for putting up a boundary and it doesn't change the heart of who you are. You, the person listening to this, are strong and powerful and creative and loving and intelligent, and you have gifts to bring to the world, including the gift of your company in a relationship. And if someone chooses not to see all of those things about you, they have a right to make that choice and not see those things about you. What they think of you really has nothing to do with the heart of who you are. You, the person listening to this, are also probably connected to people who drive you absolutely insane, or who you find to be petty or mean or manipulative, the very people you have in mind as you're listening to this episode on Going No Contact. And those same people who behave that way with you also have strengths and creativity and intelligence and gifts to bring to the world. And if you don't see those things about them, you also have a right to make the choice not to see those things about them. And hopefully you see what I'm trying to get at. I'm trying to get us to decamp from the binary of good, bad. They're bad, I'm good. They're toxic, I'm not. I'm right, they're wrong. They are emotionally immature, and I am mature. I am kind, they are assholes. Instead of deciding that they are bad and you are good and you have to go no contact because they are so bad or toxic, try to see the whole person. They are not necessarily bad as a label. They just might not be for you. They just might not have an alignment between what you want and what they want in the relationship. And deciding to go no contact in those situations has nothing to do with labels or making them wrong, and everything to do with who you truly are and what you want the most for your life. That is the most powerful position from which to make any decision, and this is a big one. Once more time, this is not about they are wrong and you are right. You are not deciding to go no contact because they are bad. You decide to go no contact with someone when you are fully aligned with who you truly are and what you want most for your life, and when you see that there is a relationship in your life that does not align with that, or that holds you back from that, or that challenges you constantly and chronically over and over from making the kind of headway you want to be the person you want to be. And this brings us to the first criteria you can use for deciding whether to repair a relationship, limit a relationship, end a relationship. Does their behavior hold you and your life back in some way? I do believe in the biggest picture of life that every experience we encounter is an opportunity for growth, even the ones that hold us back in some way. On some metaphysical level, there is in fact no way in which we're held back. Struggle and challenge have their place in our growth and development. But part of what we might grow or develop from these situations is in deciding, I no longer want to continue to engage with this struggle, with this challenge, because it's so chronic. When someone's behavior is a chronic challenge, it's worth asking ourselves just how much drama we want to sign up for. And behaviors that chronically create friction in some way are a form of drama, even if we understand that the heart of who we are has nothing to do with them. This question of whether the behavior holds you back in some way also starts to clarify whether you want to build, repair, limit, or end a relationship. So let's start with the example of the former coworker. That's an opportunity to build. Personally, I think in a world that is this challenging with wars and so many things that are going wrong, there's always room for more connection. So even if I don't feel a lot of initial chemistry or rapport, seeing if that relationship can build to something better is where I'm oriented. But you do you. Maybe your former coworker is always texting you with updates on how the company that you left sucks even more since you left. And maybe you're deciding, I don't want these sorts of updates anymore. At the heart of who you are, you see how revisiting the crappy dynamics at that company only holds you back, and you now can make a choice. Do I try building this relationship by honestly owning that I don't like talking about our former company, or do I just let this relationship with this coworker go? And in this case, going no contact is likely not a hostile or angry decision. Your coworker isn't mean or abusive. They're just struggling and you're kind of not wanting to be there for that ride. So if you decide to build, you build. For a relationship with a former coworker where you really weren't close, you didn't hang out outside of work, you never discussed deeper personal topics, things like that, probably okay to just let the relationship fade. Just be less responsive when texting, things like that, or let them know, hey, I'm always happy to hear from you, but I'm really in a space where I don't want to talk about Acme Corporation anymore. I'm sure you can understand. In the example of a friendship where it used to be close and now it doesn't feel close, there's an opportunity for a build, as in a build to the new relationship, or a repair. If the relationship is no longer close because of random time and circumstances, try building it again. If the relationship is no longer close because of specific behavior patterns that don't feel good to you, maybe you feel like you're always there for your friend when she's struggling, but she isn't usually there for you when you're struggling, have the honest conversation. Again, don't go into labeling the person and saying, well, that's it, she's a narcissist. Instead, look at specific behaviors that you hope will change. State them, speak into them. I felt really vulnerable when I was struggling with da-da-da-da-da. And when I texted you about it, you didn't ask any questions and the topic shifted to talking about some stuff in your life. That had me wondering whether you noticed how much I was struggling. Again, at the heart of who you are, which is bigger and more powerful than anyone else's behavior, you know that whether your friend supports you or not is less important than whether you support you. Do you have the capability to give yourself positive self-talk during difficult times? Those are actually the most important questions. But of course, as part of the human experience, we want to experience love and connection, especially when we're struggling, which means that we'll want to reach out to people for support. So I'm not saying you're bad if you want support. I'm just saying make sure that at the heart of everything, you're going, am I supporting me? If that friend's lack of support holds your life back, keeps you from being in your full flow, is a challenge, is a friction point that keeps you from your fullest potential, then it's worth a conversation to try to build back the relationship or repair it in some way. If you have that conversation and the person isn't open to it, then now you know. This isn't a relationship to continue, at least not at this time in this particular form. And for you, the decision is, do I go no contact and end the relationship, or is this a relationship that I need to limit? Maybe this is a friend that you can go shopping with or head to yoga with, but she's not going to be on the list of friends that you get that first call from, if things are really bad. And it is okay to have relationships like this in life. These relationships can sometimes fade away. They can sometimes become something more. Not all relationships have to be the most deeply connected relationships possible. That, when I was in my 20s, felt like a crazy statement. Like, why would I want to, have relationships where they weren't super deep and connected? Now, in my 40s, it's kind of like, oh yeah, I have a wide variety of relationships, and they have different flavors. And there are some relationships that are really contextual. The only thing we do is talk about business and entrepreneurship. There are other relationships where we can talk about anything, and that's how it goes. Sometimes there's also a reason and a season behind relationships where someone you didn't gel with for a few years, but who remains in your orbit, becomes someone you're incredibly close to later. And now we get to those relationships that are psychologically unsafe. These are relationships where people might be judgmental. They might put you down. They might put you down in a way where they're not yelling and screaming, but it's very subtle. They might pile on the doubt when you're already struggling with doubt. They might undermine your best attempts. Maybe there's condescension. Maybe they're being snide, talking about you behind your back, not holding your words in confidence. Maybe they mock you. Maybe they roll their eyes at you. Obviously, physical abuse would also fall into the category of being unsafe. So for situations where someone is abusive and causing harm, the first priority is getting yourself out of that environment and into safety. If you are someone dealing with that kind of a scenario, please call the National Domestic Abuse Hotline. You can Google it to see the number and see support resources in your area, but the emphasis is on how to get the support you need. My focus for today is on those relationships that might have some abusive qualities, or arguments or disagreements have the potential to become abusive, and in that way they're unsafe. So psychological safety as in, I don't feel safe to be who I am. I don't feel a sense of belonging. I don't feel a sense of connection as a result of these behaviors. You know that you are technically safe physically, emotionally, but you don't feel safe in terms of your interactions with the person. There's a sense of, I have to protect myself. I can't show vulnerability. I could be subject to criticism and critique, things like that. And in those situations, if you're trying to decide, especially because they can be very confusing because there can be some good that comes along with the bad, if you're trying to decide if there's any chance that the relationship will continue, it's going to start with setting boundaries. Now, if you haven't already listened to the episode prior to this one right now, it is on setting healthy boundaries. And my encouragement is to make sure you listen to that episode. In that episode, I stated, there's a lot more to the episode, but I want to say why I'm encouraging you to revisit that episode. In that episode, I stated that I think in the majority of cases that people don't want to cause harm. And in the majority of cases, before going no contact, it's worthwhile work to attempt to repair the relationship in some way through setting healthy boundaries. And I said that the reason for this is people need the practice with setting healthy boundaries, because when you do that work, it's clearer whether or not the relationship could be saved. It's kinder for the other person, even if they are in the wrong, even if you feel fairly certain that the bad behavior is on their side. Even then, it's kinder for the other person because they at least have some understanding of why you're going no contact. And it's also kinder for you because you get to step away from the relationship with integrity. And yes, you get to step away from the relationship with integrity, and that is important. It is important for you to know in your soul, because you are a kind person, that your side of the street is clean, that you did everything you thought everything you could to handle the situation honorably and with integrity. And you deserve to be treated with respect, even if you messed up, even if you haven't been a perfect partner or family member, you deserve to be treated with respect. So clean up your side of the street as much as you can, and remember that you deserve to be treated with respect just as much as others deserve for you to treat them with respect at a basic level. So, start with setting a boundary. Make a clear statement that if the boundary is not respected, the conversation or interaction that you're in can't continue. And at that point, setting a boundary, refusing to engage if the conversation cannot be a respectful one, that's where you can see whether there's potential for anything to change. If the person can hear your boundary and has a wake-up call of, whoa, this has gotten so bad that we can't even talk, or if they're willing to be self-reflective, then that's a sign of something that could change. It also is the best chance the relationship has for shifting, because you can imagine that if you never set any boundaries and then out of nowhere you're like, bye, I'm going no contact, the person is going to be completely confused. They're going to probably just think you're crazy because it's going to seem so out of left field. And I'm not saying you're supposed to care about everything that they think about you, but I'm really going, okay, what is your aim here? If your aim is a harmonious relationship, your best chance at that is going to be setting the boundary. And if your aim is in any way, shape, or form to let someone know, like, hey, this behavior is not okay, the shot you have at them being self-reflective is letting them know, here's the boundary. Here's your opportunity for being self-reflective. More importantly, though, going back to how other people's behavior really doesn't have anything to do with the heart of who you truly are, setting that boundary is an incredible statement of self-love. Yeah. It is self-love to decide that you won't tolerate crappy behavior. You can't control whether someone will continue to dish out the crappy behavior, but you can control whether you passively tolerate that crappy behavior. And again, at the heart of who you truly are, their behavior really has no power over you unless you give your power away by reacting to it. And deciding to put down a boundary is not reactive, it's responsive, it's sovereignty. You put down your boundary when disrespectful behavior happens and you state that you can no longer engage with it. If they continue to be disrespectful and don't show any remorse or self-reflection, there it is. Painfully, now you have your answer. You've said you needed something to change, and they're doubling down. They are showing you who they are. You need to believe them. If they come back to you 24 hours after doubling down and say they're sorry and they want to change, great. Are they also sharing with you a plan for how they will change and what they want to be different moving forward? Because if not, the same pattern is likely to play itself out again, especially if they share, when they're trying to explain themselves, that they treated you the way they did for reasons that have to do with blaming you. Well, you just made me so angry when you said, or if you hadn't done da-da-da-da-da, then I wouldn't have been so stressed out. Yeah, nope, not in 2024. We are in the era of personal responsibility and accountability. And hey, if Taylor Swift can say, it's me, hi, I'm the problem, it's me, then so can the rest of us. And of course, if you say, this isn't working for me, here's my boundary, and they never reach out to you and say, I thought about what happened. Here's what I wish I could do over. I thought about what happened. Can we talk again? They're also telling you the truth about where they are at right now. They are showing you who they are, and you need to believe them. Someone who doesn't recognize the need to apologize and take accountability for their behavior is probably not someone you want to have close access to you, if any at all. Again, you will be deciding these things, and it is a hard decision. And I will be saying this quite a lot through this episode, but get support, because this is tough stuff. So let's move into the structure of the conversation, the no contact conversation. The no contact conversation doesn't have to be dramatic or big, though of course for you, it likely will feel that way if you've arrived at a point where it's time to have that conversation. One thing you'll want to be mindful of is not letting it get into the territory of debate or arguing once you've decided that you're having a no contact conversation. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can forestall that or kind of mitigate against that in the structure of it. So find your own words, but the structure is essentially this. First, let the person know you'd like to have a conversation, set a time. This is best for in person rather than text, unless, of course, you literally are unsafe with this person. Then, by no means, don't get into their orbit. You can start out by letting the person know that you care and have good intentions. If, of course, you do care. You don't have to lie, but it can be helpful to let the person know that you're coming from a place of care, or at least trying to come from that place. Then let the person know that you have decided to step back from or end the relationship, which means that you will not be in contact with them at all or for the foreseeable future. If they ask for a reason, or if you want to simply supply one to head off any debates about why, the reason you have decided to step back from the relationship is because you feel that it is the healthier choice for both of you. And because this might be shocking or hard to process for the other person, I suggest you clarify what no contact looks like. Since I won't be in contact, this means I'm asking that we do not call, email, text, or follow each other on social media. To exit the conversation, you could say something like, I really appreciate your willingness to hear me out, and I do wish you well. If the person wants to argue or debate, you can reiterate, I hear what you're saying. I've thought about this a lot, and I know that neither of us has been perfect in this relationship. Again, I've arrived at a place where I realize it's time for me to step back from this relationship. So moving forward, I'm requesting that we do not call, email, text, or follow each other on social media. Maybe the person is going to say, this is too sudden. You're not even going to give me a chance. You can empathize with that. I can see how it feels that way. I'm letting you know where I'm at now because I'm clear on my decision to step away from the relationship. You don't have to give an explanation for why you didn't do it sooner or why you did. Like, you're letting them know that you are clear now. Now you have clarity. And so now you're letting them know. If the person says, look, I want to apologize. I promise I'm going to make it up to you. I want to do things better. Again, judgment call for you. You could say that you're open to talking, but if you really have arrived at a place where you know that even if they apologize, even if they make promises to do things better, and especially if they have a habit of apologizing and promising to do things better and then it doesn't get better, you could say, I appreciate your apology so much, but continuing our relationship is still not something I'm open to. Or you could say, I really appreciate that you would apologize. It means a lot to me. If I feel like something changes on my end, and if I'm open to a relationship in the future, I will reach out to see if you are open. That's it. Now, if any of what I just described feels like it's not harsh enough, if you feel like the way you want to leave the relationship is to let them know what they did, you want to tell them off dramatically, you want to point out all they did wrong, like people do on television, I got to tell you that that's not going no contact with kindness. That's perpetuating the very same abusive behavior that you yourself are saying you don't want in your life. You're basically saying all the blame is on you. Here's the criticism, and I'm cutting off from you anyway, but before I go, I need to let you know what a shit person you are. And get clear that this isn't about them actually. It's not actually about their behavior. It never was and it never will be. You deciding to go no contact, if that's what you're doing, is about you deciding to do what you need to do to have a peaceful life with harmonious relationships. All right, big deep breaths, because now we're going to get into the realities of going no contact. This is based on my personal experience as well as an amalgamation of the many experiences of my one-on-one clients over the years, kind of summarizing the general themes here. And it's this. Here's what you can probably expect. Of course, everyone's situation is different, but this is what you can probably expect. At first, going no contact will likely feel like a relief. Having the conversation where you tell someone that you have decided not to be in contact any longer will probably feel like a weight lifted off of your shoulders. You may even feel powerful which makes sense. It feels powerful to stand up for yourself. And congratulations, by the way. This is a hard conversation to have. It's really tough. Really, really tough. But then, almost universally, there comes anger, grief, and in some cases, shame. And as someone who has walked through this experience myself and had a surprise wall of anger and grief and shame hit me so hard that I fell into a pretty bad depressive episode, I want to say that you really want support during this process. And I am not putting in a plug for myself when I say that, just because I have supported people through this process. I can support people, but I'm literally saying, even if it's not me, you need support in the aftermath of going no contact so that you don't get so caught in the processing of these feelings of anger, grief, and possibly shame that you get stuck. I totally own it. I got stuck. And I went a really long time and things got really dark for me before I finally reached out for help. If I had it to do over again, I'd do it very differently. So why is it that when we finally have the courage to decide that we'll set a boundary and stick to it, even if it means going no contact, when we finally then won't have to deal with the behaviors that are hurtful, that we experience so much pain? Well, what happens when we let go of difficult relationships is that once we no longer have to deal with the day-to-day of the difficulties, we start actually processing what we experienced. We have more room to process what we experience. And usually there's at least a little bit of, let's just start with anger, as we ruminate over what we tolerated for so long. Remember how I keep talking about how the heart of you is so much bigger, it's beyond other people's behavior? Once you know you no longer have to deal with that person's behavior, you're probably going to find yourself thinking or saying out loud, I cannot believe I put up with that for so long. The thing that we really feel angriest about was that we tolerated what we tolerated for so long without standing up for ourselves. The other person is only a piece of it. The bigger piece and our bigger personal power is how we treat ourselves, what we allow into our orbit. I've said this for years. There are no energy vampires. None. They don't exist. Energy vampires don't exist. No one can draw blood from a vein in my arm that I'm not giving them access to. And no one can draw energy from my life if I'm not giving them access to me. Which means that part of what I have felt angry about after letting go of a relationship is I can't believe I gave them access, The other reason people often feel angry is that they've held their anger back for so long, trying to just make it through each day. And once you don't have to deal with that person any longer, now you're really pissed. Now your somatic system knows that it has all the room and all the safety to truly feel what you truly feel. And some of what you truly feel will probably be anger. The same thing also goes for grief. Now that you've finally had that conversation, crossed that point of no return where you really see that things will not change and you also cannot stay in the relationship, all the emotional tension of trying to hold yourself together could result in grieving the lost relationship or relationships if it's family and it's multiple people. And this grief is no joke. I can't say enough. You need to get support because especially if it's family and especially if people are picking sides and they've got team anti-you going on, it can feel like multiple people involved have died. I felt that way because I had multiple people involved and I knew that I was never, ever going to be the same again as the result of how I was treated. And I knew that I was never, ever going to be able to look at either of those people in the same way. Last, for some people who go no contact, there's an extreme sense of shame. This is particularly the case in families where there is a history of blame as a way of navigating arguments. And as I mentioned, if multiple people have picked sides and made it clear that they are not on your side. Now, the shame is interesting because I actually think the shame is behind why a lot of people who are doing things that are unkind or petty or mean or judgmental just won't apologize. It's too much for them to apologize because then they'd have to face the shame of what they've done. They know what they've done on some level. I agree with Dr. Brené Brown's definition of shame, which is that guilt is a healthy emotion that essentially says, I feel bad for doing this thing. And someone operating from a place of guilt, if they have that self-reflection, they usually are going to approach you and say, I feel really bad that I did this thing. But shame is an unhealthy emotion that says, I feel bad for who I am. So for someone to apologize to you when they are stuck in shame is a way of them saying, I actually think I'm a bad person. And people don't like to admit that. People don't like to say that. And by admit that, I don't actually even think most people are bad people. They don't like to admit how ashamed they feel. So then for those of us who essentially say, this dynamic in this family is so bad, I have to exit, they are likely to be labeled as the bad one. And for a dysfunctional family unit that is banded together against the one person saying, this is so bad I have to exit, a great defensive response for the family unit to try to maintain the old pattern is to tell the person who is asking for change, no, this isn't so bad, you are so bad. So there's fighting the shame they feel with shame towards you. The core message from the family to the person asking for change is, if you'd just be different, if you just shut up and put up with all the things we're dishing out, then we'd all be okay. After all, we all get along just fine. You're the one saying things have to change. You don't like it? Fine then, go ahead and leave. When you've grown up in and been conditioned in a family like that, the very worst thing you can do is tell the truth about the dynamic and tell it accurately. And when they hit you back with, you are the problem, then decades of conditioning that you received in very small ways are going to be sitting there waiting for you to deal with them and can take over your emotions, especially when you have just had a no contact conversation. You feel vulnerable, you feel scared. It's a big decision. So again, get support during this process. That is so critical because on a Monday, you might feel like I got this and I can handle it. And on a Tuesday, you might feel like, oh my God, I just made a huge mistake. Maybe it wasn't so bad. Maybe I can tolerate being told that I'm too much, that I'm not enough, that I should have done X and I wouldn't have been yelled at, and on and on and on. It's a confusing time and it's hard and you need support. Now, in addition to getting the support, I want to leave you with one more recommendation, and it is how to process out challenging or difficult emotions. And I have talked about processing your experience in a number of different Your Courageous Life podcast episodes. Episode 56 is on how to regulate emotions. Episode 73 is on how to process your experience. Let's see here. I'm looking at my sheet right now with all the episodes of the podcast. Episode 70 is practice reframing fear. So I want to leave you with some of those resources because as those feelings are coming up, obviously, I say obviously in the self-help space, the personal growth and development space, we don't want to push those feelings down because pushing them down just means that, they fester and they eventually are going to come back out. Okay. You want to process them and essentially metabolize them. And by metabolizing them, what is meant is you utilize the emotions for what they can give you without letting them hang around. And there is actually something to the process of allowing yourself to feel the full anger that you feel towards them, towards the situation, towards yourself for putting up with it. It's time. The anger is going to need to come out. So will the grief. So will the grief. And if you don't proactively deal with it, unfortunately, what often happens is it comes up in some way to be dealt with at an unexpected moment. And I don't think that's what you want. And of course, then shame. Getting support around any feelings of shame, if that comes up for you. It doesn't come up for everyone. It tends to come up in families where the dynamic is such that you were shamed and therefore you're feeling shame as you process your experience. So I know that this has been something of a long episode. I want to make sure that as you're finishing it up, you take it slow. You do not have to rush to make any decisions about your relationships. You might listen to this episode 5 times and not take any action whatsoever, even if you know the action you want to take, for a year. That might be how you do this. This is okay. You're not doing it wrong if you decide not to take action now, okay? Take it slow. Let yourself figure out what feels right for you and aligned for you. Really dial in on setting those healthy boundaries if that you need something to focus on to at least try to make the situation better until you feel like you're at a point where you're ready to go, okay, I'm actually going to call it. This is a hard process. So above all, my encouragement is to be gentle with yourself and to know that you can do this and you can heal. And however it feels in the immediate aftermath of going no contact, if that is the decision that you make, it will not feel that way forever. You got this. All right, that's today's episode of the Your Courageous Life podcast. Thank you for listening. To dive in deeper and continue the work, head on over to yourcourageouslife.com. See you there.